So today I am talking about humility and bittul. Bittul means like self-abnegation. Well, no, it means like self-nullification. It means like just not taking up all the space. Being transparent, being something that life can flow through, being a channel that is not blocked. The Zohar says that the Holy Zohar written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his group, says the perfection of Abraham and Isaac depended on Yaakov. And Lubavitch Rebbe said they didn't go among the way he did. They avoided it, but they didn't transform it. That's why they had Ishmael and Esau. Let me elaborate. Abraham was the first Jew. He was called Ivri because he crossed over, like from the Hebrew word Hebrew, ever. And we can use it for good or bad. You can cross over your boundaries, or you could transgress boundaries. He represented kindness, but expansion, lack of boundaries, right? He crossed over boundaries. Then you have Ishmael, one of his sons, who crosses over boundaries. Just look what's happening right now in the Middle East. Not respecting clear boundaries, wanting more, wanting to transgress. That's the dark side. Then he had a son also called Isaac. Isaac was the one who kept strict boundaries, kept everything to be exact. He didn't cross over. He stayed in Israel his whole life. And but then he had a son, Esau, who uses such a strong boundary maker that it becomes weapons and war and hunting. And you see, that's the dark side, because so much keeping with the boundaries that everything is cut. He felt so wrong because he felt his boundaries were encroached on, and he became a boundary fighter, Then we have the Lubavitch Rebbe saying that they didn't go among the way he did, those two sons, right? And then Yaakov didn't have a son who had the dark side because he was able to transform it. So let's talk about the main topic here, bittul, about humility. And I'm going to say humility is often the fastest way to feel humble is face impermanence. A tiny meditation I did earlier, just a contemplation, was that, yes, God made me, and I have a depth of experience of consciousness. Or we could say I am, even if we don't say I was made, although everything has a maker, right? We could say, okay, I arrived, and there's me, the whole me. I'm so important in my life. I'm the center of my, perspective. And then we have a whole world. Each one is the center of its own perspective. Even animals have been studied by ethologists to see their level of consciousness, of experience, and if they think, if they feel. And then most people with pets would say, oh, they most definitely do. And then we move into a whole entire, not just the planet, but the solar system. There are many, not only objects like asteroids, but other planets, all centering around the sun. And then we have, the sun protecting us from cosmic collapse. And then we have, with its magnetism, right, the sun. Then we have many different kinds of sun stars in the whole neighborhood. And then there's a galaxy. And then there's many galaxies. And then there's the universe. So everything is always changing, but there's this big system and everything in it. Stars are born and stars die. Imagine a sun is born and a sun dies. And the earth is in relation to the sun, tiny, tiny, tiny. And then me in relation to the whole earth. That's one way. Another way is staying teachable and brave. Is saying, I know more than I did last year. I'm going to know more next year than I know now. What used to shock me and cause me sensitively to be affected and inspired now may not have such an impact, whatever we're exposed to over time. And so some aspects of humility is, first of all, we put down our expert hat. It's okay, with not knowing, or it is okay with not being the smartest or the best, because that person could be representing a future version of us. Well, I can't get any smarter, I can't get any better. And we can instruct directly. There's no need to overly explain. So rather than be telling everybody these things another aspect of this is that people we are willing to use will pretty much always end up betraying us. What does that mean? That means if we're basically turning people into objects, they will betray our expectations. They are not an object. They have their own will. They're the center of their own universe. If there's nothing in it for them, they'll start to notice. And so when we're instructing directly rather than overly explaining, when we're stuck in a pattern of trying to overly explain, there's a either it's offense or it's defense. If it's offense, it's trying to use someone. It's trying to like manipulate them. If it's defense, it's like, please don't categorize me, judge me into something that it looks like I'm defending myself. I want to prove my innocence or my normalcy, right? So these are situations. Humble enough to say, like, why should someone else be used and not me? Like, why am I using people? If I need something, let me be humbly asking for it. Like, instructing directly, for example, please put that over there, or I need you to do that, rather than like explaining all the reasons why the person should, like, and that's to do with being an expert. And the final thing is to reduce the low self-esteem of entitlement and arrogance. Now that sounds counterintuitive. Arrogance and entitlement is low self-esteem? Yes, because it causes us to be unable to relate because of us projecting that expects all to be inside of the set of data information we've already been exposed to, as if we recognize and know everything already. That I know exactly what that is, I recognize that, I'm aware of that, and we project it based on what we've been exposed to. If somebody's only seen the colors blue, red, and green, and then they come into a situation where there's new mixes of the colors, it's entitled to say these colors don't exist. They're still parts of blue, red, and green. No, you would say, obviously that's not blue, red, or whatever colors I said. Obviously that's yellow, that's orange, right? That's purple. So we have yellow, blue, and red. Not red, blue, green. Yellow, blue, and red, primary colors. And then you go and they say, no colors exist. That's yellow. And you're like, that's orange. That's yellow and red mixed together. So we have to be able to be teachable in that way. And there's an arrogance to think, I already know everything. There's entitlement. And that's really a low self-esteem. It's not somebody who could grow. It's not someone who feels whole unless they already are in control. So that's not a student. That's not someone who's able to be a student, a learner. And so we don't want to be left out in the unknown again. That sounds like somebody who has been hurt, right? So we end up feeling dependent on the others who do know. And maybe they used us or exploited us. They over-explained to us. They may have milked our ignorance, taking advantage, instead of maybe when we look at impermanence, we could say, like, we never know how long someone's going to be there. We never know when we're going to hear their voice or smell them again, or laugh together, or look at their style, their posture. So there's this idea that these effects of the low self-esteem that we cannot relate because of projecting, these effects can be overcompensating, right? Because of the part of us that really is not in control and doesn't know. And it cascades in terms of being someone else. Like, we become the expert. Really, inside, we feel like, so the arrogance is a false expertise, and it's a false bigness. And entitlement is a false grandness, a false permanence of the self. And now there's, the word bittul. So the Maggid of Mezeritch, the main successor of the Baal Shem Tov, who started Hasidic discipline, or Hasidism, and he said, Ich in Yiddish means I. In Yiddish is 31. Aleph, Yud, Chaf. Chaf is 20. Hebrew letters have numerical value. Yud is 10. It's like a code language, and Aleph is 1. 31 numerical value of El. El means power. It's also a name used for Hashem's might, Hashem being God, the creator of the world, the Lord, Master. We have different names, so we say El. El is power. It is the higher power. It shouldn't be said casually. I'm saying it now only in the form of this teaching. And that's how we know I comes from that very high power. And even though, his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, traveled around, and the Maggid stayed in Mezeritch till a few months, when he passed away in Annapolis, there was a plague that broke out in Mezeritch. And he had sent his students to establish centers of Hasidic life in Russia, Poland, Germany. He was like the first one to send out representatives to go to different places and set up a center. So he was the Baal Shem Tov was Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov was his teacher, his master, and he traveled around all over. Then the Maggid, and this kind of sounds like Avraham and Yitzchak, right? Because I mentioned Avraham traveled around and Yitzchak stayed in one place. So we see there's different elements. So the boundary, he said, is he was teaching us from the place of boundaries, that We do not transgress this boundary. The I comes from the highest power, whoever I am. The fact that I have an I, an I-ness, sounds like highness. It's exactly that. The I-ness comes from highness, from the highest power. And then we need to think of this like this. If my teaching needs to live in others, I need to give as little pressure, as little baggage, as little explanation as possible. And then it can easily replicate itself the way it did in me. Whether it's a code, I want to use a virus as an example. Everyone has heard of the word virus, but there's this virus called bacteriophage, which penetrates a bacteria and uses its machinery, as viruses do, to replicate itself. They look like tiny robots. Viruses are so small. What they do is submit their code. That's literally what they do. We have to learn from this in the Torah way, in the Torah meaning teaching, in the way meaning truth, of life, of light, of love. That's the code, right? If the Torah lives in us, we can transmit the code, which is just the code of light, the code of love, whatever it is. And if someone, God forbid, it would violate the holiness, has the code of hate, that can be transmitted. It's a code that can be replicated without baggage, without explanation, just a code that has a place to land. A seed is a code, and it has a place to land in the soil, and it grows. So what we make explicit, we know, was implicit before, and will be translated or expressed after. This is the idea of genotype and phenotype. A genotype is the genetic code information. The phenotype is how it's translated, it's expressed. You could have genes for blue eyes, but you have brown eyes. You could have genes for red hair, but you have brown hair, because the genes are sometimes implicit. Or they could be explicit. What's made explicit was implicit before. And then in action, it is after. Being the sign and the seal of a Jew, the code, the righteousness as a foundation of the world that guides conduct and gives an example, is the word yesod. Yesod is related to the pelvic area physically in the supernal version of ourself. This is where we have the sign, the seal. Someone gets a circumcision. It's okay, Alexa, turn it off. Weird. I don't know what I triggered for Alexa. And the code, the foundation, the base, guiding conduct, righteousness is yesod. It's also like a secret. It's to do with creativity, abundance. All of that is based in something. Then we have a question of pride. So when we're bittul, when we're nullified, when we're not arrogant, we have humility, we're not entitled, there's still pride. Where is pride in? The selflessness of cleaving to God. The fact that my I is only I because of God's I. Because God exists, therefore I can exist. And I take pride in how much I am willing to exist as God through me. And this is where we could say assertiveness is required, because we have to trust that which we are representing fully with devotion, we become less of what we are not. Example, a turnip cannot be a mango. So if a turnip is pretending to be a mango and it's arrogantly pretending to be the best mango, and meanwhile it would have been a turnip, and God coming through it would mean it would be a turnip, it stops being mango-like as its way. That means it's assertive. It's asserting its turnipness. And we become more of what we are, to give it all away for a bigger purpose of point. And slowly the process unfolds where the sureness and certainty can be manifest. A turnip that's being a turnip is sure. It's certain. It feels in its code. It is a turnip. It's matching its own code. And this is being, part of... I want to say there's two types of part. There's a part of and a part from. So a turnip that's being a turnip is a part of, right? We could say versus it's being apart from them. It's versus a turnip that's apart from its turnipness. It's being like a mango. So we become more than we ever could. The turnip that's growing as a turnip could become the best turnip. But a turnip that's trying to be a mango will never be the best mango because it's not a mango. And finally, this can mean that we have to reshape our vessel, which happens when we place the big picture that we agree to without all the details in front of us. This is what the Jews did at the time of getting the Torah. We say, yes, we will, even before we understand, even before it's explained. And this way, it allows all the tight crevices to be exposed and stretched, even for a second, so the whole future version is something that we do grow into. And I'm going to stop here and wish you a good Shabbos. It's Shabbos HaChodesh. it's preparing for the month of Nisan, miracles, and basically the new month starts on Tuesday. I have a court case on Tuesday, so for me personally, I hope that there's miracles. God likes to do miracles through the clothing of nature, is what Jewish people's view is often, Hasidic people. And yep, that's it. So be well. Bye.